Hello everyone, I'm Claire. So I'll introduce you to my practice a little bit first. So I'm an interdisciplinary artist, which means that I use a lot of mixed media, but quite a few people know me as a performance artist or an action artist, which means that I do things with my body, or I create motion, or I live experiences, and then I reflect on them and make art about it. And this is one of those pieces. I'm not as organised as you. I've wrote my notes on my hand, so if you see me looking at it, you know why. So that's what I do, and this is a really good example of that. In a lot of the works that I make with my body, I'm often storytelling or delivering narratives about things that I don't understand, but more than that, things that I don't want to understand. And I make work to kind of create mythical ideas around these scenarios and to make those things more complicated for you. So I understand that when you're looking at this work, it might look quite enigmatic and it might look a bit confusing and weird, and that's good, that's what I want you to feel. And there's a lot of worry in this talk that by telling you about it, it's going to take away some of that mystery. So I'm going to try and not do that, but there will be a few things revealed to you about it that might help make more sense of it. It's a 360 piece, so I'm going to invite you afterwards to have a good look around, but for now we'll just look at this side. It's a conceptual work that reflects on an experience that I had over a 6-month period where I moved to Australia and I lived in a stranger's house. This was through like a scheme called house sitting, if anyone's ever heard of that, which is where you go and live in someone's home, you look after their pet or their land for a certain amount of time. The person who owned the house that I was in was called Barbara. I never met Barbara, I still don't know Barbara, and she's this really mysterious figure that I love to create a kind of wondrous imagination about. And this is called Barb, so it's a homage to Barbara. During the 6 months in this house, I felt quite lonely and I felt quite immersed in her sentimental belongings, which I never understood. And I found myself creating narratives about the things that she lived amongst to make myself feel more at home and to give myself a place in her world. I was given a car, I was given a bed, I was given a cutlery, I was given a dog. And as time went on, I realised that Barbara was never gonna return to the house. This house wasn't mine, but I was the last person to ever live there. It became apparent that the dog didn't have a home anymore. The dog was now mine. All the possessions could have been mine. It was a really bizarre and sad circumstance that I had to deal with. And obviously a lot of emotion came out of that, and a lot of documentation came out of that as well. So I started taking photographs of things that were happening, photographs of people that were coming to visit the house to buy it, objects that I didn't understand that were possibly sentimental to Barbara or her family, that maybe they weren't, maybe they were, but I could create stories about, hence what this is. So there's lots of different elements on the screen that are taken from my time there, whether they're photographs or objects that I saw repeated and didn't understand, so I repeated them through my own making and artwork. There's notes to Barbara as if it's a journal or a kind of conversation that I wish I could have with her, to ask her questions or to receive like greater knowledge on what her life was. When I lived in the house, I met a lot of neighbours, and this was another really bizarre situation that I befriended a lot of the neighbours, and those neighbours would live a life as if I was still Barbara, and they were coming into the home living as they would with Barbara. So once a week the neighbours would come round knocking and they'd want to have tea with me, or they'd want to have like come dine with me situations where we'd all go round and we'd all cook for each other. So I felt like I was substituting the life of Barbara in so many ways. So this is a reflection of that situation. And then there's also moments like in the garden. So this kind of maybe only makes sense in my mind, but I see it as you enter the garden here, and this is an outside situation. So everything you can see on this screen is external to the house and memories that are created outside of the house. And on the other side of the screen is internal to the house, hence why there's like walls of writing as if you're inside a home. And whatever you see on that side of the wall is internal to the house. These are all like tiny, minute like threads that I feed off when I'm making work, stuff that feels very important to me, but that doesn't actually necessarily matter to the bigger piece. And there's lots of Easter eggs hidden in here. So that's the first concept that I sort of dealt with over the 6 months of being there and living that situation, which I very muchly think of as a kind of performance or an action in itself. And then I started thinking about these emotions that I was having, these responses that I was having to the house and Barbara and not knowing her. And I started thinking about identity, fraudulent identity, motherhood and being a woman. So there's lots of references to that on here. And through that, I started thinking about saints. A lot of neighbours were giving me examples of Barbara's life and her behaviour, which was really interesting because I was feeding off this entire character and personality through other people's storytelling, which was really beautiful. And they were always telling me what a caring and nurturing person she was, how she spent her whole life caring for the people, whether that being a teacher or a nurse or a mother or a wife. So I wanted to really feed that into this story. And I also wanted to look at saints, because she seemed like quite a saintly character in the neighbourhood, but also because I'm obsessed with saints anyway. Being raised Catholic, I love the idea of these mythical narratives and miracles that come out of those stories. So I was looking into the Saint Barbara, which has massively informed this piece as well. So Saint Barbara was locked in a tower, and she created a series of miracles, one of which is she wanted 3 windows in her tower to represent the Holy Trinity. So there's lots of 3s on this work. So there's 3 panels, there's 3 windows. There's a lot of like series of 3s on this side. If you want to look, the egg boxes are stacked in 3s. There's multiple of 3s with the fruit. So I feed in these tiny, like almost like symbolic references. So it's like a reference within a reference within a reference within a reference, and that's how a lot of my work works. What else have I got for you? I think that's me, Matt. Yeah.